Hey folks, welcome to the latest edition of the Cloud Native Now podcast. I'm your host, Mike Vizura. Today we're with my good buddy once again, Paul Nashawati from the Futurum Group, and we're talking about all the things that happened in the cloud native world this week. Paul, how you doing, bud?
Good. How you doing? Having a good day?
I'm doing great. I am, though, trying to figure out what the heck is going on with this IBM HashiCorp thing. It seems to me like on the one side, there's this Ansible framework. On the other side, there's Terraform. The Terraform community is kind of at war with itself. How do you see this all playing out?
Yeah, it's a great kind of thing that happened this week. In my opinion, I think it's a good move, certainly a great move for IBM to kind of get a good handle with the market. Back on March 20th, I wrote a research note that anticipated a lot of this activity happening. And, I have a new research note that's going out now that's referencing that. So I've been kind of tracking this for some time and watching what's happening in the space and seeing what's going on. Really, when we look at what's going on with this acquisition, it is a way to help simplify the complexity within organizations that are trying to grow in their maturity model of their tech adoption. So automation, security, service mesh, whatever it may be. You do have the IBM take, but you also have the Red Hat piece, right? Which you mentioned Ansible, you mentioned Terraform for the Hashi side. All of that plays into the picture. But what I think is kind of brilliant about this is IBM is giving customer choice. Right? They're giving customer choice on the direction they want to go, on the platform tech stack that they want to use, and move forward with it. Now, there's a lot that's happening here, but really this is showing that it's strengthening the strategic move for IBM to kind of focus on their cloud computing, software services, and align to the overall efforts and company values that they're trying to evolve to that competitive landscape. They have to, right? They have to drive in that space. And when I look at this acquisition and I look at our research and what we're talking about in our research, and you can read more about this in the research note as well. I'll just kind of touch on it, but we see that there out of this 848 person respondent survey that we did, we see that 75% of the respondents are using 6 to 15 tools to organize the data in their organizations. And one of the things that this move does is it does provide those tool sets and the tech stack, but hopefully IBM will be able to harmonize those tool sets to make it less complex for organizations to achieve their goals.
How do you think this will play out with the CNCF, which sponsored a fork of the Terraform source code project, when it was determined that they had changed the licensing policies, and that created an uproar? And I wonder, do you think IBM is going to turn around and contribute Terraform back to the CNCF to kind of unify those forks? And I'm asking the question because on the one hand, Red Hat is a supporter of a CNCF, but I look at what they're doing with Ansible and I don't quite see that one going to any consortium. So it seems like they've got a mixed message here.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm assuming you're kind of alluding to the BSL kind of licensing and the commercialization of the licensing. Yeah, it's a challenge here. So the way I view it is this, and again, this is based on our research. So I'm kind of basing most of my comments on data that we have. We see that 68% of respondents in our survey want to use. They want to work with vendors that sponsor open source projects, but those organizations don't want to go at it alone, right? They want to make sure that the vendors have enterprise level support to go at it with them. So if the organization is looking at these open source projects, and there's an opportunity to use enterprise level support, that's what organizations really want to focus in on, is using that support level, because they're not in the business to build those applications. They're in the business of doing banking, finance, whatever they're doing, retail, etc. But with regards to the CNCF and the open source community, there, in my mind, it's not an and, it's not a or, it's an and or, right? So like you can have a commercial version and you can have a supporting commercial version that maybe completely hands off. Maybe organizations are going to look at it and go, we just want a fast time to value. We work with IBM, Hashi, and Red Hat as a trusted advisor, and we're going to deploy this solution in the whole stack. Cool, faster time to value. Don't worry about what the underlying code. Or maybe they want to have completely pivot the other way. Work with open source, have it completely flexible, work within the ecosystem, and we'll talk some other things on ecosystem later in this chat. But basically, the ecosystem gives that customer choice. Which tools do you want to put in your tech stack, right? And what I like about this solution here, there's this opportunity that's coming forward for IBM, is it gives that flexibility to do the and or, right? It gives the flexibility to say you can use open source projects, you can use commercial projects, and you can kind of use the best of both worlds.
I think it's going to be a mixed play, but I got to say, there's a part of my soul that's looking over at the AI community a little bit. And this whole conversation may be rendered moot by those folks. They are making a case that says, hey, instead of using Terraform and giving that to a bunch of developers who are probably going to misconfigure something anyway, it's easier now to just kind of look at what the application requirements are, expose that to an LLM and have the LLM configure the application. And, let's just call it a day and all go home happily.
Yeah, I mean, look at the recent announcements with NVIDIA and Run AI, right? I mean, we see that the ecosystem that we were just kind of chatting about there, Run AI is providing that API approach, right? That control plane and the cluster engine to put everything in place to put up those guardrails, so to speak, to make sure that, exactly to your point, run the application development through the LLM, optimize your development processes, right? Are we going to get to the point today where it's completely fully automated, where applications are created? Probably not. I mean, there's going to be a human in the loop, right? There has to be at this point. And most organizations feel like there must be, right? We don't want to just let automation just take over the world, right? That's just not real. But I do think that this is a good example to what you're talking about with Run AI and NVIDIA. That backs up your claim, right? I mean, NVIDIA's driving that message.
Well, let's switch gears and move over to that because, while everybody was busily watching IBM and HashiCorp, NVIDIA finally turned around and confirmed that it has acquired Run.ai. And if you're not familiar with Run.ai, that's basically an orchestration tool that allows you to maximize the utilization of your GPUs. And that's been an issue for folks because, well, they're expensive and hard to find. And I guess my first question to you is, it seems counterintuitive that NVIDIA would go buy something that requires people or helps people use something they're providing more efficiently when theoretically they're supposed to be in the business of selling more processors.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that it's less about, hey, let me sell you more, right? It's more about, let me make sure you're getting what you need to be successful in your solution and what you're trying to do for your business. For example, I would say from an NVIDIA perspective, all the hyperscalers that are offering, AI kind of solutions have the ability to use, TPUs, GPUs, CPUs in order to kind of optimize depending on what you're trying to develop against. And what I see with the Run AI acquisition is it really gives that proper allocation of which tech stack, which underlying processor, which kind of flow that you're running, how do you optimize your development process, and what resources do you need to do that? And that's what I was talking about, that control plane and the cluster engine really kind of allows for the proper usage of each one of these areas.
It also seems to me that we're kind of starting to move towards a world where maybe we're trying to figure out how to be less dependent upon GPUs because increasingly folks are saying, well, I'm going to run the inference engine on anything but a GPU. So I'm only going to use the GPU for training purposes. And how often am I training? So how much of this GPU scarcity is really holding things up?
Well, again, I think it's right sizing the tech stack underneath the application to use the right tools, the right processors, the right tech stack for your application. If you can use a CPU that's adequate for the development of your AI, a workload, then that is going to be optimal for your solution, right? So that's how it works. I just think that selling GPUs, just continue to sell GPUs, it's basically putting a very large engine possibly in a solution that you don't need such a large engine on.
Right. And even if you could find the engine in the first place. So
That's true. That's true.
all right, well, let's shift another gear here because there was other news last week, and that included Stormforge is aligned with Cloud Bolt, and it's another example of this FinOps move. But essentially, Stormforge, if you're not familiar, makes an engine for helping you optimize Kubernetes to increase, again, utilization. And they are going to work with Cloud Bolt now to pass along that data to the Cloud Bolt automation framework so that you can actually see what things are costing you as you're going along and hopefully maybe put some controls in place. And my question to you is, maybe I'm getting too old for this, but I seem to remember in the era of on-premise, I would know how much I was spending. And then we went to the cloud and now it's like a monthly bill and I'm surprised. And the developers are, for lack of a better analogy, are kind of like drunken sailors, just like consuming resources as they go. Do we need some adult supervision, and what does that look like?
Yeah, this is a good one. I've been working with Yasmin and the team over at Stormforge for quite some time. The thing that's interesting is I think developers and DevOps get a bad rap when it comes to the resource allocation and utilization. I think that a lot of what I see in our research is the business KPI is to release code very rapidly, right? We see that organizations want to release code. 8% of respondents want to release code in an hourly basis, right? So DevOps just really about getting the code out the door, right? And they have to get it out the door. And the things that block them from getting the code out the door may be resources. So do they over provision? Sure. Do they know what they need to do exactly when they're starting to build the application? Not necessarily, right? So they build and they get the over provision, they have the resources needed, they meet their business KPIs. The challenge is they don't have to worry about the bill, right? So they just keep bringing in the resources and not worry about the bill. The thing that I find fascinating is the CNCF ran a survey that found that 69% of respondents in their survey, basically, they don't monitor Kubernetes spending at all, right? And that is fascinating to me because with the sprawl of applications and Kubernetes pods and clusters, that it seems like it needs some bumpers and guardrails. And that's where we look at, the collaboration here between Cloud Bolt and Stormforge really is helping, not just helping the organization, but helping DevOps properly size what they need, right? So these tool sets are putting the right FinOps actions in place to say, here's what we need to develop and push our code out the door, and here's the resources that are needed to do it. So I like this approach. I like this unified front. I definitely think it makes it frictionless and seamless. It's not a heavy lift to use Stormforge and Cloud Bolt to kind of get you to where you need to go. So I think it's the right move in the industry.
How much of this is a political issue within an IT organization? We know that there's not always a lot of love lost between the the ITSM crowd and the DevOps crowd. And a lot of those folks will say, the DevOps stuff is great for going quick, but you can't manage at scale. And to your point, they get a bad rap for maybe not managing consumption as efficiently as possible. So how much of this is like a tension that's manifesting itself within the IT organization because the CIO is under more pressure to reduce costs?
Yeah, I mean, look, CIOs their number one concern is to modernize their applications, right? They're moving forward to keep the business operational and run things forward, right? Underneath that concern is the challenge of skill gap issues and complexity and resource allocation, right? And you can either do this with your bench, or you could do this with working with service delivery partners. But in my opinion here, this just gives data to work with. So this gives the information to say, look, we're going to provide you what the spend is going to be. You can do proper budgeting, but not just go at it like, looking your finger in the air and waiting for which way the wind's going to blow. The CIO can go, okay, we can actually budget an appropriate amount, knowing that we're going to extrapolate this growth and this monetization effort to move forward. Now, we all know that not everything needs to be refactored. Not everything needs to move, it really kind of goes to what is going on within that specific business and how you're going to, build net new applications, et cetera. but the tools and the underlying tech stack that's required really needs to have some type of understanding of what the budget is to do it, right? Because if you just say, I need unlimited budget, then that's where it kind of goes out of control, right? And I think that's where this relationship here is really tying it back to giving those the visibility and the optics on what the spend would be for extrapolating those projects.
Right. We only got a couple of minutes left, but I know you guys got an observability report coming out, and I suspect that cost is tied to observability. So, give us a couple of highlights from that report, and what should people look for in it? And where
love this report. It's great. It just came back. The data's coming back. We have a bunch of research to share with anyone that wants to see it. It's on our Futurum intelligence portal. But we also have some research notes and briefs that are out there. Absolutely, cost is a factor when we look at monitoring and logging and tracing and those actionable insights. Understanding what is happening within the organization is imperative for the success of the organization, right? One of the things around cost, we found that early adoption of observability practices was about collecting a bunch of logs, collecting a bunch of data, which was bringing up the storage costs, bringing up all the resource costs, is because you're collecting all this stuff, but not knowing what to do with it. And what we're finding is most organizations are moving from that monitoring and alerting stage to the tracing and logging, and then taking that information and using those actionable insights. I know we only have a little bit of time here, and I can speak for hours on this topic because it's near and dear to my heart. But I will tell you that there's a lot of information to be found here in the Futurum Group website. There's a lot of research notes, and there's a lot on our intelligence portal to kind of dissect a lot of this data.
Right. And there's a full interview on this subject on techstrong.tv. So by all means, go check that out as well. Paul, as always, good catching up, and we'll chat next week.
Likewise. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Good luck. And of course, if it wasn't for cloud native, we probably wouldn't need observability in the first place. Take care.